So this is an Ibanez Musician MC-150, and why does Joe Bonamassa hate this guitar? Well, I'm not sure if he really hates it, but my assumption is that because this is a Les Paul killer type of guitar, it makes all of his vintage Les Pauls, the 58, 59 and 60s, worth nothing because this one is better. I've never played a vintage Gibson, so I'm not really sure, but this is a fantastic guitar and it's a lot cheaper than a vintage Les Paul, that's for sure. And what is a Les Paul killer guitar? Well, it's a guitar that has the same type of features. It sounds like a Les Paul and it sort of fixes some of the quirks that a Les Paul has because, oh boy, the Les Paul can be difficult to work with very often. So this is made in the Fujigen factory in Japan, a famous factory in the 80s. Not sure if they are still up and running. It has humbuckers, it's a solid body mahogany. It's very heavy, that's not necessarily the best thing about this guitar. Set neck, the hardware is really good. The tuners are fantastic, probably one of my favorite things about this guitar. And they are a lot better than the tuners that you often see on Les Paul guitars, that is for sure. The humbuckers are actually my favorite part of this guitar because they fix some issues that I have with not only Les Pauls but humbuckers in general. If you have been on this channel for a while, you know that I like Firebird style pickups. Well, that is because they are less muddy, you have less output, they are more clear, they work better with fuzz pedals, for example. And I think we are seeing a lot of the same things with these pickups. You either get them with Super 88 or 58 pickups, depending if you buy one of these guitars from 81 or 82. The scale length is the same as on a Les Paul. To me, it sort of feels longer, but supposedly it's the same. And it has 24 frets, so that's 2 better than a Les Paul. And when it comes to prices, I think that most people in North America, they have sort of discovered this gem of a guitar. So they are not super cheap anymore, at least in the US. I've seen them go for $1,000, $1,500, a couple thousand even, but I got mine for around $600. So I would say that in most other countries, from what I've seen, you should be able to get this guitar quite cheap. And I also think that you should be able to find one cheaper than $1,000 in the US as well. Maybe try something else than reverb, actually, because I think people on reverb, they know what they are selling and they know that people really like these guitars. If you try eBay or maybe Facebook Marketplace, you should be able to find something cheaper, because when people sell a Gibson Les Paul, I would say that most people, they are aware that they are selling something that is worth a lot of money, especially if it's older. But with the Musician series, they don't have the same status, so you should be able to get one for pretty cheap if you are lucky. And if you find one for under $1,000, I mean, go for it. Seriously, go for it. And since I'm claiming that this is a Les Paul killer, of course we need to compare it to a Les Paul. So I bought a 59 Les Paul for this video. Wow, I spent so much money on this video. No, I didn't. It's a 59 replica. I don't know if it sounds close to a 59 at all, but it sounds very close to a good Les Paul. So it's interesting to try these two guitars up against each other. And you can make up your own opinion if you think it's a Les Paul killer at all. So my setup here today is quite complex. I'm using my Fender Pro Reverb running into my bare-faced cabinet. I'm miking that with a Audio-Technica AT4081 and a Shure SM57. I'm also running into my Victory Copper Deluxe. I'm miking that up with a Beyer Dynamic M160, also a ribbon mic. I'm using a Benson preamp for some overdrive tones, and I'm pushing that with a Timmy for most of the tones that I will be doing in this video. I'm also using a Ohm Les Pedals Bore Fuzz, one of the best fuzz pedals that I ever tried. I'm using that one also. Yeah. Well, that wasn't too bad actually from the Les Paul, but let's try a few more riffs. Well, I think that sound and that riff explains and showcases a bit more what I'm thinking about when it comes to the sound of these two guitars. And I definitely prefer the sound of the Ibanez. Less output, less muddy, yeah, more clarity. Okay, next test is fuzz. So what I got out of this is that this sounds closer to how a fuzz responds to a single coil guitar, and that's definitely a sound that I prefer over a humbucker guitar when it comes to fuzz pedals. It often gets too thick and muddy again. And for the next and last test, we are just going to do some straight up rock and roll tones. If this one is brighter and clearer, we might also lose something that we like about the Les Paul, and that is thickness and also output, so also more gain. Well, I do like them both. I don't have a definite favorite, but yeah, I like them both. So I think it evens out when you turn up the gain, which is normal, I guess, in every sound test, that the gain is sort of taking over everything. But yeah, there you have it. You know, that riff from Joe Bonamassa has so much potential to be a heavy song, but the recording isn't really that heavy. Maybe they didn't want it to be that heavy, but I'm going to use the Musician and my amps and see if I'm able to do a recording that is as heavy as that riff really is. Thank you for watching this video. Heavy riff coming up. Goodbye.